Hello, everyone. Welcome to MMA Podcast Series 2025. I'm your host, Amit Thakur, Managing Partner at Wavemaker with WPP Media. And what we're going to touch upon today is an interesting topic and industry, right? We've all been seeing the change that's happening in Vietnam in 2025. And one of the industry that also saw that rapid change is automobile industry. And with that, I'm excited to welcome our guest today, Ms. Sophia Nguyen, Head of Digital Marketing at BYD Vietnam. Welcome, Sophia.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Amit. Thank you for having me here for the MMA Podcast 2025. And it's my pleasure here to have a chance to share with you my perspective and my observation of the changing of NVA market in Vietnam, and hope we have a very good journey in the next future in 2026.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. So, Sophia, let's start with getting to know a little more for our audience. Why don't you share what's your journey been, especially with BYD in Vietnam?
Yeah, okay. So my passion here work in marketing, and I'm very focused on high-value customer segment. It means it takes a long time to make decision. So luckily, I joined BYD in more than 1 year, and I learned a lot of things about consumer using the new technology and using the new experience with the car. And we launching a lot of model and a lot of things, a lot of change for me to experience in BYD. And we very focus on the experience, and we very focus on the new segment, new premium segment in Vietnam market. Okay. And I think
great. And I think I picked up a few things from your sharing, right? You're saying change was one of the things, new segments and premium. And, it connect dots back to the way I have seen my journey also in the region from the time I worked in Indonesia to Malaysia, and now it's been about 8 years or so in Vietnam, right? And there are some common themes that I also picked up, right? Culturally, family values matter a lot, right? And so it's the case in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And also because we are still part of the growing or developing economies, there's a sense of pride and status symbol of owning a four-wheeler vehicle, right? So why don't we start with that note, that in 2025, what are those consumer trends, or is it similar to these family values and status symbol also in the larger automobile industry? And how do you see this change happening between ICE versus the EV vehicles and the NEV that you want to talk about?
Thank you for your question. So from my perspective, Vietnam is the fastest market trending for the NV using car.
Interesting.
So because that's nowadays in last year, it's from January to December in this year, double than the previous year about the trend people using the NV car. The second, you can see the very supportive from government's policy. That boosts a lot of effort for consumer. Now they think they have to do NVA, which remote car, a model car, not just a consideration. Yeah, and the final now consumer more than very practical. They want to know about the technology. They want to know about the experience and operation cost and the transparent policy from the brand. So I think they require a lot of things for the brand, for the marketing, to make them to understand.
So it's interesting, right? And you mentioned that this is a segment that has been growing very fast. And I was going through some data before our session. I also realized that in general, the automobile industry has seen quite a bit of growth in 2025 also, right? And that also therefore leads to this point on saying if the overall segment is growing, within which EV is a faster growing segment, right? Where is this shift coming from, or what is triggering this shift, right? So are people getting more affluent in Vietnam and therefore more purchase, or are there different segments of audience and therefore there are certain set who are more affluent, more wealthy, and they are latching onto this new trend versus the rest of the country?
Yeah, sure. So as you can see, after more than 1 year, we entered to Vietnam market. We introduced 10 models.
Wow.
They see the full range of car because we think that Vietnamese consumer they also have a chance to use the most of that technology and the good products, and it also show how we committed in Vietnam. So I think because we have a lot of product line, and nowadays consumer have many choice of the car, so we decided to create a new segment. I call that premium segment. Premium segment. In new premium segment, it means like the new lifestyle, the new exposure, and they very glad for the eco, for their technology, and also with some, how can I say, because every country have the culture.
Correct.
And how this culture blooming and blending with global technology to enhance their life. So very luckily, consumer love it. Yeah.
Great. So good things, right? So you mentioned about technology, how people are adopting to it, and maybe that's the part which is making them attracted to this new segment of new energy vehicle, right? What besides the fact that these are sort of promoted or supported by the policies that the government are outlining, what are the other trends which is triggering this, and how has your company adopted to these trends and your journey been in last 1 year or so?
Yeah, for the consumer, they because I think let's look back for the new premium segment. I mean, premium is mean like experience.
Correct.
Experience. So the experience it helps to for the online. I call it the live stream. And their behavior to looking for live stream to have the real interaction, the real question, and right away feedback for them. And we have to address this behavior. The second, do you see in the last week we have 6 concerts, 6 mega events in Ho Chi Minh City. So I think event, because nowadays we think digital very dynamic, very fast flowing, but we are human. We need to keep in touch. We need to feel. So let's to have the real exposure. So event have to. So I think this thing the most of the thing we have to how to follow this and give them the good experience. So can I have a question? Because you are the leading partner of Wavemaker. So what do you think about the media landscape? What is the new behavior of consumer?
I think, so you have shared a few things, Sophia, and thank you for that question again.
Yeah.
One of the things that we observe is that, you know, what marketers wants to do or brand wants to build and what consumer trend are you trying to adopt or leverage.
Yeah.
I think sometimes these go as chicken and egg, you know, one follows the other. So there is a trend that brands pick up in terms of affluent consumers in the market who are ready for a new technology kind of EV that you're also promoting, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are trends that brands are trying to create or media is trying to create as the new wave or as the new trend, right? And that's what we try to set as trend. So something similar that we also observe that the experience, especially in the automobile industry, that has become the key to make sure that consumers start experiencing either the new technology or the new model or the new segment of EV, right? And that's where our focus is, both from working with our clients and brands which are in the automobile segment who may not have or who are from a regular ICE industry still and who are embarking onto the new journey of EV. But what remains constant for all of them is this part of how we give a full funnel experience for the brand such that consumers can actually experience the brand, right? And as you rightly mentioned, right, from concerts or events to also making sure that they get to know about the brand through our regular media campaigns. So I think it's a combination of what you leverage as a consumer trend, but also the fact that certain times when the brand has been brave enough to actually set the trend.
Yeah. So, okay, I remember in the previous discussion between us, I think, because for the traditional mainline digital or the mobile media landscape, we have to create the way the starter way, right? And booming in the event.
Yeah.
And after that, the brand have to consider how to maximize the mobile or media another landscape to really earn media to continue the way, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And because we are talking about this, right, I think some of these elements have already been used by the big brands in the market, right?
Thank you.
What were those things that you leveraged, Sophia, from your experience, and how did it impact your business for any specific labels that you have in the market?
Yeah. So for the BYD, I share with you, we also focus into key point. The first we call that live stream. Live stream, I think we were proud of it because we created the architecture of live stream. It's not only live stream blooming. I call that for the brand. We created the big for nationwide live stream from the brand scale. And after that, we also had a training for our dealer to create the live stream mini concerts, mini show live stream for each dealer. So we are rounded. We also have the first live stream marketplace in Vietnam auto industry, and they can create a lot of edutainment for the consumer to know our product. And the second, we create the event as you say, because we also have the event to have the touch and feel and experience our product, because I call that premium. It means experience.
Exactly.
Yeah, and experience mean like how consumer have the real story and real feeling. And nowadays, I think it's more convenient and touchable for the consumer because it's relevant. And for this we focus. We win with consumer for the two product line. The first product line is Sealand 6. And this is the most talked about BSEV in Vietnam, because we create the new segment with the ocean class and they grow with the new lifestyle.
Interesting.
For the M6, we very lucky for the service transport station car, and we partnership with our partner mean like RA, and we call that this is the real new premium for the driver and for the customer. Yeah.
Interesting. So the fact that you're focusing on the consumer, not only the passenger sitting on the back seat, but also focusing on how the driving experience has been, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is again something that a lot of brands did also in the past, right? In the olden eras, and you continue to leverage these learning and build it for your new segment, right? Great. So 2025 seemed very interesting, Sophia. And as we leap into 2026, right, with those learning, with those understanding of consumers and the industry, how do you see 2026 that will look like for automobile industry in general, and then for you?
Yeah, I think 2026 is the very special times because so after many years changing, and I call that 2026 is the tipping point time for consumer changing, because in the last year Vietnam market is the fastest market changing, and consumer before they think, should I choose the EV car or hybrid car, but now they trend to which model new EV car I should choose.
Interesting.
Yeah. So for us, we want, because we have a lot of consumer, they have to think what should they choose. So we want to win the new premium segment to go along with them.
Interesting.
So I think very interesting. And so can you share with me you both of you how about the media landscape for the market if we have many segments? Correct.
So I think again the fact that automobile industry in general is expanding, and EV segment is what is sort of driving that growth hugely, right? And therefore, starting from a small point, which you mentioned at the beginning for 2025, that you targeted this particular segment and you created sort of this new premium segment, right? And therefore, as we both understand that the growth is now going to come from the newer segments in the market, right? And these new segments, when we work back home with our clients as well, we understand is going to actually come from various parts of Vietnam, right? So it's not one particular pocket that is going to grow. So we'll have some audiences from North versus South, so Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh, and also interestingly the tier 2, tier 3 towns, right? So the challenge back for media, therefore, for us is to make sure that the brand's message and brand is visible in these particular audience segments, in these particular regions, right? And that is going to be one of the key focus for us. While we do that, what platforms are we going to choose to make sure that we reach these different pockets in the country and different audiences? But equally, how do we engage with them, right? And we discussed a lot about how your company has leveraged live stream in past in 2025. I think that part of continue to build an engagement for the brand, which not only creates awareness, but also sort of creates an affinity where you highlight your technological features, right? So whether it's the tech of the car or the comfort, the engine power, because EV is still new, right? So you will still need some bit of education, but we combine the entertainment aspect as well. And what we intend to do from media is make it into an edutainment kind of content, right? Which will engage the consumer and drive affinity for the brand, and yet target different pockets in the country to make it effective for the brand.
Yeah.
Right. So if this is what media is looking forward from an automobile segment, EV, Sophia, how do you see for yourself and for the company leveraging some of these aspects that we want to do in 2026?
Yeah, thank you. So I share with you, we want to focus on new premium segment, right? So I'm very inspired with your company name, like with Wavemaker. And I think, marketer mean like we are the Wavemaker. So I call that we create the new way. But the new way, this is not a trend. It create a lot. I call that we want to create the architect of the way in the long run.
Interesting.
Yeah. So for new premium segment, I call that if I think about the premium, I think about the experience. So the first way, I call that live stream.
Okay.
So consumer can experience the car through the phone. How they can ask the function, they can ask the feeling, and I call that every dealer also have every mini show, and they can edutainment consumer continue and in the long run.
So you actually move from a brand centric message to also allowing or engaging with the dealers who can also then connect with the customers. That's interesting.
Yeah, luckily our dealer they align very well with the brand, consistent. We're lucky for this, and we can have the same message at scale. Yeah. The second, I call that the second way is using AI.
Okay.
But AI for personal content, for personal segment. And help consumer to have the content and social content. Because now AI, I think this focus for one people or one KOL or KOC can enhance their ability to create the content and also use it for the real content and real user, the real testimonial and real feeling. Yeah.
That's good. So I think, interesting to see how we actually conclude this podcast, because we moved all the way from a larger automobile industry, but driven by technology of EV, and then the new segment that's being formed as a premium segment, right? And that's what you saw your growth coming for BYD as well. And then as we leap into 2026, you mentioned talking about expanding those consumer segments, expanding with new models and labels. And from a media lens, as I shared, it also means that this growth is going to come from different parts of the country, right? And also, therefore, how do we reach out to these audiences and these segments? But what remains consistent is experience, the whole live stream part. And the last thing that you mentioned also about AI. So AI being talk of the town already for quite some time, but what continues to be the ground rule is that let's still connect to humans, let's still appeal to them through AI. You create content that is appealing for people.
Very interesting question. Yeah, because our support for our dealer, I call that every member of BYD we become a KOC.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we have the concept AI in human loop, and every of us have a very own beautiful story. and I think AI can help them to share their story and share their customer story faster, easier, and realer, right?
Great.
So I call that we also have the live stream at scale, from the friend to dealer to every KOC of us.
Wow.
And every staff of BYD will become a KOC using AI and have the real story. So I think this is the way architect,
Sure.
and a long way, and continue. I also have to continue my story in the near future, and all of my colleagues, all of my partner also the same.
Great.
Yeah.
It was absolutely wonderful, Sophia, talking
Yeah.
to you and getting to understand and discussing with you about the automobile industry and especially the NEV.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us today. With that, we would like to bring closer to this session today. I hope the audience enjoyed it. See you soon in the next podcast for MMA.